Hello guys, what's up? I'm Ahmad Fad, back with another video about programming. Welcome to the first episode of our machine learning course, a course in which you can learn machine learning in the simplest way possible. Guys, before I explain you what we're going to be learning today, let me tell you something. So a lot of work, time and effort has gone and is going to the production of these videos. So I would really appreciate it if you could go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So what is this whole video about? Today I'm gonna explain you different kinds of machine learning, which consists of supervised learning and unsupervised learning. But we are talking about machine learning. You have deep learning, neural networks. Well, neural network is basically part of machine learning. We're not gonna get into that. Today I'm just gonna explain you what is supervised and what is unsupervised, which is kind of the basics and you should know them when you are starting machine learning. So now that we got the formality out of the way, let's jump right into it. I've got myself a new small drawing pad, so let's get into it. So I'll try my best to explain this as fast as possible, but in a really simple way. So we have machine learning at the top here. I apologize for my bad handwriting, and it's my first time using it, so sorry. We've got machine learning. Now machine learning goes into two different types. First, we've got supervised learning. So supervised learning, which is basically the one that you might be familiar with, and we've got unsupervised learning. Now in my opinion, supervised learning is a bit more useful than unsupervised, and that's basically what we're going to be focusing in this course. We might do some unsupervised learning as well to basically get an idea about how it's done. Alright, so what is supervised learning? In machine learning, we usually want the computer to learn. That's basically the whole goal of it. Now in supervised learning, the way we do it is we give it some inputs and the outputs, the answers for those inputs. And the computer is gonna learn how to get those outputs using those inputs. Hope that makes sense. So let me draw a small graph here. So we have these inputs, right? We do something on them. This is what we do, this arrow. And we get our answer, which is our output. So in regular programming, we define this arrow for the computer, but in machine learning, we don't do that because in most of the projects, it gets so hard that it's basically impossible to explain this arrow to the computer. So what we want to do is make the computer figure out this arrow by itself. How do we do it? We give this input to them, and we give this output, and we say for this input, we have this output. We give a bunch of more inputs and outputs. And for each of them, we say for this, we have that, for this, we have that. And the computer sees a lot of examples and figures out what arrow we should use to make this. And the point is that this arrow is the same for all of the inputs. So the computer needs to find the perfect arrow to get the output from any input we give it. And sometimes the outputs are similar, sometimes they're not. Depends on how we do it. But in unsupervised learning, it's not like that. We have a collection of inputs and we don't know what the output is gonna be. What we wanna do is for the computer to group them together. So let's say we have a bunch of circles. This is just an example. I'll tell you some like real world examples for you to get a better idea. So imagine this is our input set. What we want in unsupervised learning is for our computer to group these two together. So say that's one group and this is another group. Remember, we're not giving any output or anything to it. We're not telling it this is group 1 and this is not. This is the computer realizing all of these. Okay, now let's get into more details about these type of machine learning. Supervised learning has two types on its own. So two types. The first one is regression, and the other one is classification. Now in simple words, the output in regression is continuous, but in classification, it's not continuous. And the best way to explain it is by an example. So let's set an example for regression. Imagine that we have a machine learning model that is trying to guess a estimated value for a house based on its features. So let's say as our input, we give the total area for the house, how many bedrooms it has, and all of this stuff. And the output is going to be a continuous value. Why? Because it's going to be a value estimated for the house. It can be, I don't know, for example, let's say from 500 pounds, let's say it's just for renting, all the way to, I don't know, 2,000 pounds, right? And the value can be anywhere in this scale. But in classification, it's not like that. Let's say example for it. Let's say we give this picture of a man to the classification model, and we want to know if this is a man or not. Now the output is not going to be continuous. The output is going to be in a Boolean value. It's going to be either true or false. This guy is a man or not. So this example that I set here can be only in two values, and it's basically 0 or 1. But let's say we have a collection of stuff. We have a man, we have a car, and I don't know, let's say we have a tree, right? And we want the classification model to realize which one is which, so that next time that we give it an input, let's say an input of a man, it will know that this is this. You see how it's done? In regression, we give it some values as our input, and we get a value, estimated value, in a continuous scale from 0 to anything. Or in this example, from 500 to 2,000. But classification is not like that. It's self-explanatory. It classifies our input. So it says this is that, and so on. So now let's get into unsupervised learning. Now unsupervised learning divides to two groups as well. We have clustering. Oh boy, we're learning a lot of technical terms. So we have clustering and non-clustering. And basically in clustering we cluster, and in non-clustering we don't cluster. Okay, so as I explained to you, basically clustering is the one that we explained here. We give it a bunch of values and we want the machine learning model to group these values for us. A good example is the gene examples. Let's say we have 1,000,000 genes and we give these to the clustering model. Now we don't know which gene is what. We just give it, and the clustering model, based on their similarities, group them together. And let's say it gives us, I don't know, 4 groups. Say we have this kind of gene, this kind of gene, and this kind of gene, and this one. That's how clustering works. Now non-clustering is a bit different. So in here, as you can see, we're not changing the inputs, we're just grouping them. But in non-clustering, we change them. Now a really good example for that is the voice examples. Let's say we have 2 people in a room and they both talk at the same time, and there's only one microphone picking up both of their voices. Now each of them are talking at the same time about a different thing. We give this input to the non-clustering model, and the non-clustering model basically differentiates them from each other. So we have like an audio like this. We give it to the non-clustering, and what we get is an audio like that, and another audio like that. And this one is one person, and this one is another person. Now as you can see, we have changed the input. We got this as an input and we changed it into these two. But in clustering, we don't do that. We just group them. In non-clustering, we change them. Wow, that was a lot of technical terms, but I hope you learned it. This is the whole mind map if you want to look at it again. So to recap it all, machine learning goes to 2 groups: supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Supervised is regression or classification. Regression has a continuous value, but classification doesn't. Classification basically classifies an input for us, says if it's true or not, if it's part of another set or not, which is the example that we have here. Unsupervised learning goes to clustering and non-clustering. In clustering, we group the input. In non-clustering, we differentiate the input. So that is it. I'm really happy with how this video turned out, and I hope you've enjoyed as well. If you did, please consider subscribing, because this is just the first episode of our machine learning. In the next videos, we're gonna get into algorithms, some really good mathematics, and into code to basically make our first machine learning model from scratch. Leave a comment below, tell me some ideas for future videos, anything you want, and I'll see you in the next one.